Okay, so today I wanted to show you guys how to make mock-ups using Silhouette Studio. A mock-up is a really nice thing to have to showcase products or create product listings without having to actually make every single design that you have available. So you could take a blank mock-up, which is a photo of the item without a design on it, and add your design digitally so that the customer can see what it is that you're offering without having to actually make it in case nobody buys it or whatever. So in Silhouette Studio, there's a couple things that you need to know. First, in order to actually export the mockup, you need to either upgrade to, I believe it's Designer Edition. I have Business Edition, but I think Designer Edition will do it for you. But you need to upgrade to whatever paid version it is that will allow you to save it as something besides a Silhouette Studio document. So my upgraded version, I could save it as an SVG, a PNG file, a JPEG, a PDF. You want these options here. If you don't upgrade, the workaround to that would be to use something like your screenshot tool if you're on a Mac, or a snipping tool on a PC. Either one would work too. The only issue with these snipping tools is they tend to not be very high quality, and so you might have some issues with blurry photos if you do it that way. So it really is better to upgrade. But I just wanted to start out by saying that is you can make a mock-up in here, though there are some limitations. You need to be able to actually get the mock-up out of here to post to your website or your Facebook page or send to customers. So that's something you need to know first. Now, actually making the mock-up, you need to set up your workspace to work okay for that. So chances are your silhouette looks like this by default. I don't usually use the grids, but I know a lot of people have these grids turned on. You need to go into your page setup panel over here and click on the grid tab and uncheck show grid so that that goes away. You don't want the grid in your mock-up. Then go to the main setup, and under cutting mat, choose none, so that cutting mat goes away. Honestly, I don't know if that matters that much, but it kind of messes with me anyway, so I always hide the cutting mat if I'm not cutting, just so it's not cluttering up my space. The other thing you need to do is you want to make sure that you size your page to the image, and I'll show you how to do that. So first, you want to actually pull in a blank mock-up, and I've got one of mine pulled up here. We're going to do a mug to start out with. So you can either drag and drop it in, and it's giant, or if you wanted to navigate to it, you go up to File and go to Merge, and then you can navigate to whatever mock-up you want. But I'm not going to pull it in that way because then you have to watch me browse and try to find stuff. So here is the mock-up when you first pull it in. It will likely be huge. You just bring it down to size. You don't need it to be giant or anything. Usually around the size of the mat is fine, but if you're going to export it using Silhouette's file save, if you have an upgraded version, you need to make sure that the mat area or your artboard, whatever you want to call it, is the same size as your photo. If I did it like this and I saved it, it would crop out what's outside of the white and then include the white. And you want it to just be your photo. So what I usually do, so you click on the photo and you can see the dimensions over here. If you come over here to the, what do we call it, transform panel, and you click on the one with the little arrows, it lets you resize it. So I'm going to hit the little lock so it doesn't warp the photo, and I'm just going to make it 12 inches wide, because then we know it's the same width. We're starting out with something the same. And then you could see the height change to 8 inches. So if you come back over here to your page setup, and the width is already 12, so that's fine, but let's go change the height to 8 inches. And then you can come back over here to your transform panel and hit this little center button while the image is selected, that is. If you hit center, then it drops it perfectly lined up on your artboard. So you don't want to see any of the white, but you also don't want to be bigger than the white either, or else it'll crop it. If you are worried about it and you wanted to see what you're doing, you can come over here and turn on cut border. Although once you turn off the matte, that's probably not super helpful, but if you turn on the matte, then you can kind of see that you're lined up with the white there. But as long as the sizes match, then you're fine. You just want to have it centered right there. So the next thing you want to do is pull in one of your designs. So I already have one picked out that I was going to do that I thought would work well for this demonstration because it has a flat bottom. So with mugs, especially any kind of drinks, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine when I see a mock-up and it doesn't curve with the mug. So you just drop it right over here. And when you put the design on, like how you think you're going to make it or whatever, when you see one where the bottom of the word is obviously not curving with the mug, that's kind of a dead giveaway that this isn't real. And the whole point of a mock-up is you want people to think that this is what it's really going to look like, and that's not really what it's going to look like because the design would be curving with the bottom of the mug there. So that's why I chose this particular design, is because I have a straight edge on the bottom, so it's a little bit easier to show. So in order to make it so that it curves with the mug, you select the design. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so we can see it better. Select your design and then come over here and go to the warp panel. I do believe that you have to have an upgraded version for the warp panel. So if you do not have an upgraded version of Silhouette, this is the best you're going to get, which is fine and it's still totally doable. And honestly, most people wouldn't even notice that it doesn't curve. And if you have it small enough so it's not right next to the curve like that, then really it's not even nearly as noticeable. You know, if I make it that small, it's fine, and you can totally get away with that. One thing to keep in mind though is if you're doing this to showcase a product that you're hoping to sell, you need to make it as accurate to what the final product will be as possible. Otherwise, if somebody buys it and then they get it and they say, wait, what? The design is this small on the mug, you know, like nobody would do that. But you want it to be what you can do. So for me, 11-ounce mug is not a big deal, but when I do 15-ounce mugs, I pay close attention to the size that I'm making it in the mock-up, because I can't really get all the way to the edges in my mug press without it starting to kind of fade. So if this was a 15-ounce mug, I probably wouldn't make the design any bigger than this, just because I know if I went all the way down to the edge like that, if I was making this for real, it wouldn't have good results up here because of the limitations of my mug press. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to make sure that you're making it as accurate to what the finished product will be as possible. If you're doing vinyl or even with your printer, you've got limitations on how big you could print things. If you're doing something on an 18-inch pillow cover and your printer will only go do like a 13-inch square, you don't want to make the design 18 inches all the way out to the edge of the pillow because you can't do that. Well, I mean, you can if you taped it together and pressed it a million times or whatever, but you want to make it as accurate to the finished product as possible. So, sorry, little rant there, but you want to make sure you're not false advertising here. So I'm going to center the design over the mug here, and then go over here to this warp panel. And if you look at the three options, the cone one, that you don't need to worry about that for this. They do have some templates that you can use. This one is the general idea what we're doing, but it smashes it way too much. So I really don't recommend using their templates. Just go to the main warp one and hit warp selected shapes, and it'll give you this grid. And the grid is what we want. So you see this top line here and this top line there. The goal is you want to make those match the curve of the mug, both on the top and the bottom. So there's a couple ways you could do that. You can grab, oh, come on. If you double click, you can grab, okay, it's not letting me do that. Well, sometimes you can get it to let you grab the middle. I don't usually do that because it stretches the middle of the design out, so it makes it look tall. So you don't want to actually mess with the main part of the design. We're going to warp the edges. So I know it wouldn't let me do that. Maybe I'm thinking of Photoshop here. But if you move a corner at a time, and these little red dots, these help you curve it. So I move one down and then move the little curve up just to get it to match the curve of the mug, and try to keep these little orange boxes kind of level with each other, so you're not messing with the thing too much. You don't want to warp it so that the design actually gets messed with, but you just want it to match the top curve of the mug. So if I click off, bad example for the top curve because it's not a flat line, but if you did have like another flat edge on here, you'd see that that top part matches the top of the mug. So now we're going to come down here, we're going to do the same thing, and this one's down far enough so I'm not even going to move the orange boxes, but you just curve these little arms until you feel like you have it matching the curve of the mug. And then you can click away and you can see it. That is how you would do a mock-up on a mug or a tumbler or whatever, anything with that kind of curve shape. And then once you're all done, like I said earlier, you could do a screenshot tool, or close that, or if you have an upgraded version and you're doing it this way, you can go to save, save as, save to hard drive. I'll just go to the desktop and I'll show you the saving options. For this, I would just use a JPEG. PNG files are going to generally be larger, take up larger file size, and you don't need that. PNG files are really more beneficial for things with a transparent background and graphics with letters. This is a legit photo in the background, so we'll just keep it as a JPEG. And I'll call this video. When you hit OK, it'll ask you the size you want it. Really, if you're just sharing it on mobile devices or a website, 72 dpi is fine. If you're wanting like a high quality photo of it, you can go up to 300. It just kind of depends on how high of a resolution of a photo you want to end up having for your final version. But for anything I'm doing online, I always do 72 dots per inch, the 72 pixels there. Then you just hit save and you're done. So I can go to my desktop here and open it, and you can see there's no weird white lines around it. It's cropped just right for the image. And then you have that mock-up done. So what I wanted to do real quick is show you a couple of different things. I have a couple already laid out here. I'm not going to size the artboard. I just wanted to show you, you know, shirts are popular. So we'll do a shirt real quick, and then I have one more that I was going to show you. Shirts are pretty easy. You just rotate it to match the shirt, get it the size that you would want. Again, being realistic with the limitations of your printer or your vinyl cutter and your press, but you just get it laid on there how you want. Something like this is where it comes in where I really do rather use Photoshop, because you can get some blending effects in there. All you could really do in Silhouette is adjust the transparency. So if you come over to the fill panel, you could adjust the transparency just a little bit. You don't want to go that much, but just to try to get a little bit of the shirt showing through and making it a little bit more of a realistic representation of what you can do. So depending on how polyester your shirt is and you're using sublimation, if it's only a 60% poly shirt, you might need to have it a little bit more faded. So adjust that, tweak the design a little bit to get how you want it. One thing to mention here, you really do need to be using ping files for these because you need to have no background behind the design. This particular design, if you look at it, there is white in these dots, and so they're showing up white, and that kind of, I mean, very few people would actually notice that as being a thing, but if you're doing this on a colored shirt, that would cause problems. So you really do have some limitations in Silhouette, but for the most part, it gets the job done well for most things. But just playing with the transparency a little bit can help to show, you know, what it might really look like on the shirt. The other thing I wanted to show you was you could do the same thing, but do it with an SVG file. So this is an SVG if you're doing like a sign, vinyl stencil, or even if you were doing HTV on a shirt, SVGs will do the same thing. So this isn't an image. I can come over here and recolor it. Let's say I wanted to make the text, let's just, for fun, let's make it a dark red. Oh, come on. So let's just say we're going to make the sign with red text. That's kind of the bonus of an SVG here. So something like this, it's not being curved. We actually want to kind of adjust the perspective here, and that's why I chose this SVG, because it has a nice flat edge at the bottom again, where you can't just drop it over something like this because it obviously doesn't work. So we're going to do the same thing, but just a little bit different. We're going to go back over to the warp panel. And for this, I actually do like to use their little templates because there's one right here that works really well. You have to adjust it, of course, but if you click on that, it gets you started pretty well. So what I like to do is the same concept with the mug. We want to line up this top line with the frame of the sign. So we're going to grab this corner and bring it up here like that, and grab this corner and bring it down here like so. Try to not move your vertical line there so it keeps the right shape. And then you could center it, and there, that would get you that. And then you just save it and export it just like the other one. So one thing to keep in mind if you are doing one for like a sign, the transparency thing does really help. Sometimes you're going to have a little bit different paint or whatever. Hopefully you've made it before, used those paints before, you know what it'll look like, but sometimes the colors look way too bright for what it will be in person. So adjusting the transparency just a little bit helps it kind of blend into the background more. But anyway, that's how you do mock-ups with Silhouette Studio. If I missed anything, feel free to leave a comment or message me, and I will try to circle back and answer whatever questions you might have. Thank you.